So we've been doing this series on like writing a story.
Sure.
And I thought that it would be good because we didn't do this, and maybe we should have kicked it off with this, or I don't know. But I thought it would be good to give our recommendation for a book that we use a lot when writing a story, and something we go back to a ton, as far as just the structure and overall what you should do.
What do you do when writing a story?
What do you do? So,
What is our advice?
well, our advice is this little...
Buy this book. The Writer's Journey.
So to preface this, we haven't been endorsed by these guys or anything. I mean, this is just...
trust us. At this point, no one's endorsing us.
But
That's
we...
okay.
We...
Felt it valuable to
yeah.
share this knowledge. All right, so
Yeah.
Christopher Vogler.
I don't know anything about him personally.
I don't
but-
know about he.
He wrote this book that
his
I use a
picture's
lot.
nice. Kind of has a Jeff Foxworthy type of look going on.
Oh my God, that's
Look,
bad.
That's not bad, Jeff.
Oh,
Jeff
he totally
Foxworthy
does
is a-
look like Jeff Foxworthy.
I mean, a little bit. Like he's an amalgamation.
Yeah.
He's like. All right. Anyway.
So, I just.
I'm sure
kinda
he's a
wanted
nice
to-
gentleman. He's an intelligent being, and he knows how to break down story in a very clear and concise way. The writer's journey, not to be confused with the hero's journey, which so ironically or intentionally is in this book.
Sounds like a Reading Rainbow.
That's what I'm trying.
Like,
That's
yeah,
what I'm going
okay.
for here. Yes.
Um,
and in this book, you'll go on a wild adventure of how to tell a story in a proper way, and I really love it and recommend it because it has all the bells and whistles that you need to tell a story.
You need like your kid to do that or something because that's.
He'd be cuter.
So yeah, I mean, really, I just thought it would be good to talk about like why we think this is such a valuable book.
Yeah,
what
so
you're going to
this-
find in it, and just kind of riff on that. I mean, I think the thing that I like so much about this particular book
Yeah.
is that it doesn't get into like, I feel like it doesn't get into like nuanced examples a ton. I mean, it does use examples, but it doesn't.
Story does with McKee.
Right.
Right.
And
I mean, this does, but
it uses
he doesn't
examples.
he doesn't get into the nitty gritty.
It's not the only thing.
Right,
It's
exactly.
like, I feel like this book, I mean, if you're writing a story, this is kind of like almost like the textbook to writing a story. Like it has.
It should be.
Yeah, I mean it breaks down everything into each chapter, and each thing and part of a story is broken down into its own section and explains it very, I think, easily to digest. I think easily to understand, like, okay, this is at its base form what the inciting incident is, what
And what it's meant
a
to be.
shadow villain is, what.
So, what's also very cool is as you go through the book, you guys can't see it, I'm sure. I'll hold it up so you have a chance to zoom in. He bolds things as he's writing through it.
Yeah.
So, for example, here the word showdown, shadow, elixir, hero.
Yeah, right.
Every time he says these words, ordinary world. Talked about that yesterday.
Yep.
Anytime he mentions these words in the book, he bolds them so that you're ingraining those into your mind. They
Right.
become your vernacular
Right.
as you read through this book. And it's very interesting because he pinpoints exact moments in films where the hero's journey is at play.
Right.
And honestly, where hero's journey is at play in most films, well, I can't say that. Most films that people like watching has the hero's journey at play.
Yeah.
Films that people have to force themselves to like typically don't have usually doesn't have every element of the hero's journey at play, and that's done intentionally because some people think, well, I can deviate from the hero's journey. I don't need to have this, doctrine or
Yeah.
dogmatic approach to writing a story. People challenge you on that, and I always push back. I say if you're a veteran writer, by all means, let the world be your oyster. And deviate from the hero's journey and structure as much as you want. But if you're trying to learn how to write a
Yeah.
story, start with Vogler, start with McKee, learn the basics, and write stories based off of this.
Yeah.
my other recommendation is when you start with this book. Maybe read the book first. You don't have to. It kind of depends on what you want to do. Like maybe you want to put it into practice and be like, hey, I'm going to start on page 1 of the writer's journey, and I'm going to write a screenplay as I read through it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Totally do that. So you read a chapter, you write that portion of your screenplay. Because he breaks it down. You know, he takes you through all the steps.
Section by section.
Ordinary world,
yeah.
call to adventure, refusal to call, and he takes you through the whole hero's journey in this book.
Yeah.
So you could write a screenplay if you went chapter by chapter in this book and just wrote your story to this model.
Yeah, you could.
But what I would say is, if you're a new writer specifically,
just read it.
Don't begin writing your story without first referencing this.
Yeah.
And starting with this. Because I know people who, we've done it. We've started screenplays where we did not start following this framework. Then we get to a point when we're writing and we're stuck. So we're like, well, how do we get through this? So we turn to a reference, which is great. I think people should. If you're stuck, this is a great book to go towards and reference. But then the problem is you get into it and say you're, midpoint of your film and you're stuck and you didn't start with this framework.
Right.
He's going to dismantle your entire script and you're going to see immediately.
Which isn't a bad thing.
No, it's great. Well, it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Because you wasted all that time writing 60 pages up to that point and you find out, well, I just might as well start over.
Sure.
Or I'm going to end up rewriting the first 60 pages.
It's always easier the second time.
Right. Which is good. Which is good because you should do that.
Yeah.
So to avoid that frustration, I would say start with this book and stick to this book.
Yeah.
At least until you know it front and back.
Well, the thing I also like about this particular...
set that up there.
the thing I also like about how he set this book up is it gives all of the kind of like diagrams and frameworks up front of like, okay, here's like the hero's journey circle.
Yeah.
Here's how to think about, beats of action and reaction in a scene, like ups and downs. And here's how to think of like the overarching, like beginning, middle, end, denouement, things like that.
And he also introduces A plot, B plot, C plot, and interweaving them.
And it's all kind of up front. And then he goes into them section by section and breaks them down in detail.
Yep.
So it's almost like a book that like you read the whole thing. And once you feel like you've understood all the content, like the reference stuff is all kind of nicely packaged in one section. Like if you need to go back and
like
reference.
I don't have to dig to the middle of the book to find
like what page was
the
that
diagram.
What
I think it's on page 9. There you go. See that? Giving this away for free. Copyright strike or something. I don't know. But yeah, he breaks down all of your act structures and where each moment on your hero's journey sphere or circle is meant to happen.
Yeah.
And this is a great reference for that specific moment because there's, sometimes you're like, wait a minute. Is crossing the threshold? I mean, that one's easy. So let me not use that one. That one's easy.
Is Ordinary World before or after?
Okay, well, that one is definitely first act. Like, I don't know.
But
Central Ordeal. Okay.
Yeah.
Where is that? Is that like in the middle? Is that at the beginning of my second act? Is it at the end of my second act? Is it because a lot of times people put their Central Ordeal as their inciting incident, and they don't have anywhere to go from there.
Yep.
And that's that's a problem. Like you can't have your inciting incident must lead you to that Central Ordeal. But everyone wants to get to the cool stuff right away.
Right. Well, and he doesn't just have the story points. He also has breakdowns of certain character archetypes and stuff. Right. And he uses examples from films and from books a lot. I mean, I think probably the 3 heaviest referenced films in that book, I think in a lot of books, are usually like Lord of the Rings, Wizard of Oz, Gladiator.
Yeah, I mean, well, those ones just do it so well. But
I
think
like
he has the easiest. Lot, actually, I don't know.
No, he does. He uses Disney films. He uses like, oh,
there's a film. What is that? A Fight Club? What is that?
You legit found a film. A film cell in there.
There's 2 cells. There's 35mm film in here with the audio next to it. What is that movie?
That's kind of cool.
It's a positive, too. That was a cool bookmark.
That was a cool bookmark. That's kind of a funny find.
Weird. I put it back. So it's
yours. It's your book. I'm pretty sure that's your copy.
Yeah, it is, but I don't remember where.
Where you got that from.
Anywho,
Anyways, but what I was, they use a lot of references, but I think, the three that I mentioned, Wizard of Oz, Lord of the Rings, Gladiator, I think those are like really good films to watch as far as like you could watch it along with that book, like with the diagram and like
sure.
follow it point by point.
Right.
And I don't think at any point you would ever get confused as to what point we were on. Some films, even the ones that you're following hero's journey, sometimes it can be a little muddled or just like happens a little differently or in a little bit different point. Mm-hmm. The ones I mentioned, those are like the textbook. This is the hero's journey,
Right. It's interesting. This is kind of a side note from the book a little bit, but it is the book's fault.
Like you keep holding it up, like
it's the book's fault. Before I went to film school, I wanted to learn how to write story, right? Mm-hmm. For some reason, I don't know why. I was just like, I would really love to learn how to write a screenplay.
Yeah.
And I didn't know all the nuance and all that crap to it. But I understood it from like a surface level, because when I watched movies, I could see a structure. Like I knew, like, okay, this is gonna happen because this is what happens in every movie at this time.
Sure.
I'm an hour in. This is gonna happen, kind of a thing.
Right.
Then when I got formal training in this by going to film school, and then the years after of personal study, it really started to ruin watching movies for me.
Yeah.
Like the mystery.
It did.
The mystery of like, what's gonna happen next? Totally out the window. I know what's gonna happen. I know how this film's gonna end.
Right.
It makes it fun, though, because yes, you know something's going to happen, but you don't know exactly how it's gonna happen, and that's the excitement for me now, is seeing how does the director apply the hero's journey through their own interpretation.
Right. And you can tell something is really well written and directed if you get done watching it and you never once thought about that. Like it followed it, but I mean, like when I just sit back.
I don't know. I think
and
a lot of
enjoyed
times
it
I watch
without-
really good movies for the first time, and sometimes I'll be watching next to somebody and they're like really into it, and like, this is so great. And I'm like, don't get too attached. They're gonna die.
I would hate that. Like, get out of here.
What do you mean they're gonna die? You've seen the movie? No, I've never seen the movie, but I can just tell you they're gonna die. But don't worry, they'll be reborn, and it will be better. Sometimes, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But you can. There's like a spider sense inside of you where you're just like, I know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's because you became aware of story structure. I became aware of story structure because of this book. But it's a great thing because now I can break down stories too. And that's one really big thing. Like when you're talking to somebody and someone asks you for notes on their story, you can now go to them after learning these processes and the hero's journey. You can go to them with universal truth to storytelling versus subjective opinion on your notes. So when someone says to you like, what's wrong or what's not working here, you can be like, well, this part completely doesn't make sense because this shouldn't be happening here.
Right. Your character isn't here yet. Or,
you're bringing in third act moments or late second act moments into the beginning of your film. You need to push that stuff down.
You're not.
Wait, hold out.
Right. You're not sitting there being like, what didn't work? What didn't you like about it? Like, I just don't like it.
Yeah. Or right, exactly, because that's usually like, wow, I don't know, it just sucked.
Yeah, I just think it sucked. Well, why did it suck?
That's a bad note giver.
Yeah, right. Well, why did it suck? I don't know. Just do it.
It's just I didn't like it. More often than not, you see first act stuff making its way into third act, which is weird. Mm-hmm. But it's good because once you know this structure and how the story should progress, you can pick those out. You can be like, why are we going back to the ordinary world here? Like, if this is important, move this to your first act.
Right.
If you're okay getting rid of it, get rid of it. Right. Because right now, it has no point in your third act.
Right. And it's cool, too, because...
that's why people have problems with flashbacks in movies. I like them,
It's cool, too, because, like, we talk about film a lot, obviously, because, like, we make movies.
Right.
But if you read that, this isn't just, like, a film-only writer's journey.
This one's more film. You're thinking McKee.
No, this absolutely...
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he uses
Oh,
films
yeah,
as reference.
No, this apply. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm saying the hero's journey and how to write it. You can read this book, whether you're writing a novel, whether you're writing a comic, whether you're writing a TV episode and a full show. Like, you can read this, and it's applicable for any.
But that's because story is universal.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
But I'm saying this breaks it down, I think, so well and so contextually, like, as far as just like these are the points that if you are a writer of any kind, this is the book I'd recommend.
Caveat to that, this is broken down into a film structure with first, second, and third act.
But technically that's play structure also.
No. Shakespeare plays were 2 acts. So
true.
Okay, so this is where I'm like, I'm only saying that because I think that's what I was taught in high school, and I don't know. I don't remember if that's true. I can't remember, but I do know that story structures deviate between mediums.
Sometimes.
And so you do, like, I don't know exactly how a 3-act structure would fit, but I think it could translate because honestly, just make your act breaks at natural places. Yeah. I don't know.
I think more so just like as far as the circle goes.
This makes sense of like how do you write a character's world
right? Like okay, how do I from beginning to end? How is my character compelling? Because
what do I need to be thinking about? These are the things that fill them in, make them feel full.
Because I think you could deviate a little bit and add stuff together. I know like Dan Harmon who writes Rick and Morty.
Sure.
I know he uses the writer's circle, but he like kind of condensed a couple and ended up making it just like a 5-point or something.
Well, right,
circle.
and that's the other thing when you're talking feature length
versus
90 pages,
20-minute show,
right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, so that is something to think about. Like, how do I navigate this, for my format,
right?
But I think I mean, it's a great reference for anyone looking, especially if you just think you're a narrative writer, and you're just like, I'm just gonna write novels. It's like, still look at this because there's some great resources here.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely
fantastic. And anyone who hasn't gone to school yet, or maybe doesn't want to go to school, if you want to become a writer and you have a story to tell, and maybe you just don't feel like you have a firm grasp on it, don't pay someone else to teach you. Pay $30 to Vogler's publishing company. He'll get his rights.
Yeah.
And learn it from there. Because honestly, this book alone, paired with McKee, which we can talk about in another film, or another Real Talk, those two together will set you firmly on your direction for being a strong writer.
100%.
And there's so many people like who do it better than what we're doing right now, who break this down online. Right. It's like, yes, you could go to college if you really, really want to, but just know you're wasting your money because you can learn it from this book.
Yeah.
If you want to be a writer, be a writer.
Yeah.
Do the J.K. Rowling approach.
Right.
Write it on napkins.
Right.
So
that's a great reference to start.
It's a great reference, especially when you're still. Look, there's a mountain.
On that
building
note.
Action and reaction. There are peaks. There are valleys. Successes and failures. Wow.
So
unwrap that.
If you're getting into writing, this is where to start. I mean, if you that's like our recommendation. If you are writing anything, if you're, like I said, whatever you're writing, you get this book. I mean, like, I don't know.
That was the most redundant part of this whole piece.
Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, get this book. I don't know what else to say about it.
No, it's a great book. Everyone should have it.
If you're a writer, this book should be in your backpack or briefcase or wherever with you at all times.
If you are a director, same thing goes for that.
Yeah, I mean,
you might not want to write. Maybe you want to direct other people's stories. Fine, great, awesome, do that, but get this book. Because if someone hands you a screenplay and you can't look at it and know why there's a problem, you're gonna direct really crappy films. Because you won't be able to fix it. Same thing with a producer. If you're a producer, know this. Because you got to be able to talk to your directors and your writers. I mean, it is universally probably one of the strongest tools any filmmaker can start with. Forget a camera, forget lights, start here, and then get out your iPhone.
Like
so on that Real Talk,
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. If you have any input, leave them in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. As always, we'll see you tomorrow.